If you were to look at Europe and you were to look at European stock indices such as the French CAC 40, which is at a new all-time high, which was touched very recently, you might say, well, actually, there are areas of the global stock market that are doing very well. Of course, everyone focuses on the S&P 500. Everyone knows that the key resistance area is 4,200, and this hasn't been breached. But let's not forget, we're coming into earnings season. A lot of questions, as you mentioned rightly, about the banks, not so much the big banks where results have been good, but the regional banks where we haven't seen the results yet. We haven't seen the level of deposits in detail at some of the banks which are somewhat challenged at the moment. And I think that is a question mark. Of course, people are looking at the leading economic indicator in the US, which is very clearly signaling recession later this year. And that's what's at the back of everyone's minds. On the one hand, the question marks about the trend in earnings, and we do expect US earnings to be falling now because you're coming off record profit margins in a slowing economy. It's hardly surprising. But I would contend that yes, we do have leading indicators suggesting recession later this year. But if you look at the data right here, right now, even in the US, it is surprisingly strong, particularly on the consumption side. And this, of course, is something we also see both in Europe and elsewhere, for instance, in China.
Edmund, I'm glad you brought up the French market. I was talking to a French trader investor over the weekend who was pointing out the very narrow leadership you've seen by French stocks, very similar to what you've witnessed stateside around the S&P 500, a handful of tech names that have bounced aggressively. Same story too when it comes to the luxury names on the French market. If we're not seeing a lot of breadth at this point, what does it say?
It does say that the advance that we have seen, such as we have seen, is challenged, because you do want to see more participation. If you look, for instance, in the US, it's quite clear the mid and small caps have not been participating. And as you pointed out, even most of the S&P 500 has not really participated that greatly in this latest bounce over the last few months. So that does put the market movement into question. However, I'm still relatively optimistic that earnings results will come out somewhat better than expected, that the economy may stay decent, although it's slowing, may stay decent for longer than expected, and that actually may give us the impulse to make the next move higher eventually.
Edmund, very good day to you, sir. But the market wants to see a recession, and it wants to see tighter credit, because as you quite rightly say in your notes on air here, the Fed wants, they want the Fed's work to be done for them from now on in as well. But as you quite rightly say as well, the data's fine at the moment. There's a little bit of concern about credit tightening, not much. A little bit of concern about some jobs becoming less available, not much. Retail sales, again, relatively robust as well. So if the market doesn't get what it wants from the Fed, and the Fed continues hiking because it has to, because it's set out its stall, can it really move higher, sir?
Well, that's the question, Steve. Does the Fed need to continue hiking? Because I think what we all need to remember is that the market can be somewhat impatient at times, wanting results today. But what we do know, Steve, about central bank hiking is that the effect of high interest rates takes a long time to fully percolate through the real economy. You know, there's a lag time of 12 months plus. So all the rate hikes that were already done in the last 12 months are still only starting to have their effect now, and will continue to have a greater effect over the next few months. And Steve, the US economy is slowing. It's just slowing from a very strong starting point. So the question is, if it continues to slow, could we even possibly get the so-called soft landing? We seem to have gone from people expecting no landing to now expecting a hard landing. But there is still a possibility that you get something in between. And, you know, that's not my central scenario, but it's sort of becoming a little bit more likely day by day.